My name is Carl, and I don't even know where to begin. My world has been flipped upside down, and I'm not sure where to turn for help anymore. I'm telling you this story because I need to get it off my chest, to make sense of what happened, and maybe to warn others. This is the story of how my wife, Elizabeth, had an affair with a wealthy investor and tried to convince me it was part of her personal finance learning journey. Elizabeth and I had been together for 7 years, married for 5. Like any couple, we had our highs and lows, but I always thought we were solid. We had a good life, nothing fancy, but we made do. I thought we were building something real. But then, about a year ago, everything changed. Elizabeth got obsessed with personal finance. It started out innocent enough, reading books, watching videos, going to seminars, but it soon spiraled out of control. At first, I was supportive. I don't know much about finance. I have a basic understanding of mutual funds, but that's about it. I didn't think it was a problem that Elizabeth was interested in learning more. We weren't rich, but she said this was about securing a better future for both of us. Little did I know, that's when everything started to unravel. Instead of growing our financial future together, Elizabeth seemed to be growing closer to John, an investor she met at one of these seminars. He was a mentor to her, she said. But over time, I started noticing things that didn't sit right. I could never have imagined that my wife's obsession with learning about finance would lead her to betray me, and to justify it all with the excuse of personal growth. But that's exactly what happened. It wasn't long before Elizabeth's passion for personal finance started to take over her life. At first, I didn't mind. She would spend a few hours here and there reading books or watching finance videos online. It seemed like a good thing. Maybe it would help us get ahead financially. But then it started escalating. She began attending seminars, and I supported it. I figured it was her way of improving her financial knowledge, something we both could benefit from. I was clueless when it came to things like the stock market or cryptocurrency. I knew enough to invest in some basic mutual funds, but that was about it. I'd never been interested in finances beyond the basics. But Elizabeth, she was diving in headfirst. She would spend hours talking to me about the new things she was learning. I tried to listen, but to be honest, most of it went over my head. As time passed, she started spending more time away from home, attending these seminars and meeting with people she'd connected with through them. One name kept coming up: John. She told me he was a mentor, a successful investor who was helping her understand the world of wealth building. I didn't question it too much. After all, he was helping her, right? She seemed happy, and that was all that mattered. But it wasn't long before I started noticing the cracks. Elizabeth stopped contributing to our household expenses, claiming it was all part of her financial strategy. "I'm investing in our future," she said. I took her word for it, but as the months went by, it started to feel like I was carrying all the weight alone. I kept paying the bills, handling everything, while she focused on her learning. Then came the late nights. Elizabeth would often leave after work, saying she had seminars or meetings with John. I started getting uncomfortable with it. She'd be gone until midnight or later, claiming it was all about securing our financial future. When I voiced my concerns, she'd brush them off, saying that I didn't understand finance and that I should just trust her. She even began to mock me, calling me naive for not seeing the bigger picture. I tried to ignore it at first. I didn't want to be controlling or overly suspicious. But then things started to change. Elizabeth was acting differently. She was wearing more revealing clothes, spending more time with John, and ignoring me more and more. The distance between us grew, and I started to feel like I was losing her. But she didn't seem to notice. One evening, something snapped. I was walking by a seminar hall when I saw Elizabeth's car parked outside. I had a gut feeling and decided to go inside. When I asked about John's seminars, I was told that the last one had been months ago, and they were only held every few months. This didn't add up. So, I decided to dig a little deeper. I found out that the seminars weren't daily like Elizabeth had said. They were weekly, and they took place at a cafe in the evenings. I decided to check it out the next night, and what I saw crushed me. Elizabeth was sitting with John, way too close. He had his hand on her waist, and they were whispering to each other, exchanging looks that weren't exactly friendly. I stayed back, but my heart was in my throat as I watched them. I waited, hoping this was just a misunderstanding. But then it got worse. I watched as John started teasing her, even licking her ear in a way that made my stomach churn. My mind raced as I pulled out my phone and recorded everything, knowing she would deny it later if I didn't have proof. Finally, when things were getting too intimate, I walked up to their table. Elizabeth's face went pale when she saw me. John didn't seem fazed at all. I sat down, told him I was Elizabeth's husband, and he laughed it off. I asked her if she had slept with him, and she admitted it. But what she said next was worse. She claimed it was all part of a deal to learn about personal finance, and that John had promised her big returns if she followed through. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. She tried to justify it, claiming it wasn't for pleasure, that it was all for our future. I couldn't even process the words coming out of her mouth. This was no longer about learning finance. This was about betrayal. She tried to save face, but the truth was out. She had slept with John, and I couldn't pretend it was anything but an affair anymore. She had been lying to me for months, and now she was trying to cover it up with ridiculous excuses. I couldn't hold back any longer. I yelled at her, demanding to know what gave her the right to secure our future like that. It wasn't just the affair, it was the fact that she had destroyed everything I believed in. I couldn't stand being in the cafe any longer. I left, and she followed me outside, trying to grab my arm. I pulled away, telling her that I was done. She wasn't welcome in my home anymore. I went home, devastated and angry, not knowing how to even begin processing what had just happened. When she came home later, she tried to explain again, but I didn't want to hear it. She said it wasn't infidelity, that there were no romantic feelings involved. I told her to leave. She begged me to reconsider, saying that it was just business, but I couldn't see it any other way. I didn't want to be part of her twisted plan anymore. She packed her things and left that night. And just like that, the woman I had loved for years was gone. The next few days were a blur. I didn't want to be around anyone. I kept replaying the scene over and over in my head. Elizabeth, sitting so close to John, laughing, touching, exchanging looks like they were more than just business partners. It felt like my whole life had been a lie. I felt humiliated and betrayed, but the worst part was the realization that she hadn't even seemed sorry. She never apologized for what she did. She wasn't even ashamed of what had happened. I couldn't escape the questions that kept circling in my mind. How long had it been going on? Was I really just a fool, letting her lie to me for months? How could I have been so blind? I kept thinking about all the time she had pushed me away, all the time she had said she was busy with seminars or meetings. Were those really about business? Or was it all just an excuse to be with him? When Elizabeth finally reached out to me, I didn't want to talk. She texted, then called, then left me voicemail after voicemail. She tried to explain, but her words sounded hollow, like she was just trying to save herself. She said it wasn't what it seemed, that it was all for us, for our future. But nothing made sense anymore. How could she do this to me, all in the name of some financial plan? How could she justify crossing that line and sleeping with someone else just to learn about investments? I didn't pick up any of her calls. I couldn't look at her, listen to her voice, hear her excuses. What we had was gone. The trust, the love, it was shattered, and no amount of words could fix it. After a few days of silence, I had to confront the reality. Elizabeth wasn't coming back. She had already moved out, and when I went to the apartment she'd rented, I saw that she had already replaced everything. New furniture, new decorations. She had completely rebuilt her life without me. And the worst part was, she didn't even seem to care about the wreckage she left behind. That's when I realized something. It wasn't just her. It was me. I had been so focused on keeping up with her, supporting her dreams of wealth, that I lost sight of my own. I had become so caught up in her world that I forgot about mine. I let her take over, let her manipulate me into thinking her plans were for us both. I forgot that I had my own goals, my own dreams. I forgot who I was. And that was the hardest part to accept, how I had allowed myself to be drowned out by someone else's ambitions. I stayed in that apartment for a while, barely leaving. I couldn't face anyone, not even my friends. I was ashamed. I felt stupid for not seeing what was happening right in front of me. But deep down, I knew that I had to do something. I couldn't keep wallowing in self-pity. I needed to start rebuilding my life, even if I didn't know where to begin. I slowly started picking up the pieces. I canceled all the joint accounts we had, took control of my finances again. I realized that I had been so focused on her success that I had neglected my own financial health. I started reading again, getting back into my own personal finance routine. It wasn't easy, but it was a small step toward taking control again. One day, while I was out grabbing a coffee, I ran into someone I hadn't seen in years, Paul, a friend from high school. He asked how I was doing, and I told him the truth. I was honest about what had happened with Elizabeth. I expected sympathy, but what I got was something different. Paul didn't try to make me feel better. Instead, he told me something that stuck with me. "Man, you're better off without her. I know it hurts now, but this is your chance to build something for yourself. Focus on what you want, not what she was dragging you into. This is your life, not hers." I'll admit, hearing those words was like a slap in the face. But in a good way. It made me realize that I had been living for someone else, following someone else's dreams. And it was time to change that. I started making decisions for me. I took some time off from dating, just to figure out who I was and what I wanted. I started exercising again, eating better, and focusing on my mental health. Little by little, I was piecing my life back together, not for Elizabeth, but for me. And slowly, the anger faded. I stopped obsessing over the betrayal and started focusing on the future. My future. It wasn't easy, and it didn't happen overnight. But every day, I got a little stronger. I started making plans for my career, my finances, and my personal life, and for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was in control again. The hardest part was learning to forgive myself. I had let this happen. I had allowed her to control me for so long. But over time, I came to understand that it wasn't just my fault. She made choices too. And those choices led us to where we were. I don't know where Elizabeth is now. I haven't heard from her since that night. But I've moved on. I learned from everything that happened. And while I'll always carry that pain, I won't let it define me. I realized that my future isn't about money or who I'm with. It's about staying true to myself, learning from my mistakes, and building a life that makes me proud. No one can take that away from me. Not Elizabeth, not John, no one. And that, finally, feels like freedom. It's been months since that day. I'm not sure when the anger finally left, but it did. I've come to terms with what happened between Elizabeth and me, and I've realized it wasn't just the betrayal that hurt, it was the fact that I had let her control my life for so long. But now I see it for what it was, a lesson. A painful, messy, and humiliating lesson, but one that I needed. I've learned that no one should ever be the center of your world, especially not someone who doesn't value you the way you deserve. Elizabeth wasn't the right person for me, and I wasn't the right person for her. And that's okay. Sometimes, we have to go through the worst moments to find the strength to move forward. It wasn't easy, but I slowly started building my own life again, piece by piece. I realized that my happiness shouldn't depend on someone else's actions. It had to come from within me. I've learned to be independent, to stand up for myself, and to put my own goals and dreams first. And that has made all the difference. I've also learned that trust is earned, not given freely. I trusted Elizabeth because I wanted to believe in her, but in the end, I wasn't being true to myself. Trust takes time to build, and once it's broken, it can be hard to fix. I'm not sure I'll ever trust someone the same way again, but that's something I'll have to live with. As for Elizabeth, I don't know what she's doing now. Maybe she's still chasing some big financial dream with John, or maybe she's moved on to someone else. Either way, it doesn't matter. She's no longer a part of my life. I've stopped thinking about her as much, and when I do, it's only because I've learned from the experience. The pain, the anger, it's all fading into the past. Now, I'm focused on my future. I'm setting goals, making plans, and living my life on my terms. The best part? I don't need anyone else to validate me or my decisions anymore. I've realized that the person I need to impress is me. And that feels good. For anyone going through something similar, someone who's been lied to or betrayed by someone they loved, know this, you're not alone. It hurts, and it might feel like you'll never recover, but you will. It takes time. It takes patience. But you'll get there. And when you do, you'll realize that the person you were meant to become was always inside of you, waiting to break free. I don't wish Elizabeth any harm. In fact, I hope she learns what I did, how to build a life that doesn't depend on anyone else. But I'm no longer angry with her. I'm grateful, in a way, for the lessons. I wouldn't be who I am now without that painful experience. So, as I move forward, I hold on to one thing: I am enough. And nothing will ever take that away. And if you found this story helpful, please like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more stories like this. Thanks for watching, and take care.